Welcome back to the Sleepy Scholar. Somewhere near you, tonight, there may be a small sound, a low, steady hum, rising and falling like a tide that never fully goes out. You have heard it 1,000 times, maybe more. A cat, curled warm against your side, or on the arm of a chair, or simply sitting in a patch of late sun, making a sound so familiar you stopped truly listening to it long ago. But what is it, really? Not the feeling it gives you. Not the warmth, or the weight, or the way your own breathing seems to slow to match it without you deciding to. What is the sound itself? Where does it come from, deep in that small body? Why does a lion, 10 times the size, never make it? Why does a kitten make it before its eyes have even opened, before it has heard a single word spoken to it? Why, when scientists opened up the question in earnest, did they find that even now, in this very year, we do not fully agree on the answer? Tonight, we are going to sit with that mystery. Gently and slowly, the way you would sit with any old friend who still has secrets. We will start with the sound itself, close and immediate, and then we will follow it backward, into the throat where it is made, into the earliest hours of a kitten's life, into the long 10,000 years of a strange and quiet choice cats made about us, long before we chose them back. We will talk about physics and falling and a body built to land softly. We will talk about a coat pattern discovered only recently in Finland, unlike anything seen before. We will talk about a single fossil jawbone found in a cave in China that rewrote what we thought we knew about the smallest cats that ever lived. And near the end, we will talk about what happens in your own body and in the cat's when the two of you simply sit together in the quiet. There is no test at the end of this. No need to remember any of it. Just let the facts arrive the way the purring itself arrives, low and slow and without any hurry to be anywhere else. If you like falling asleep to gentle, true things, you are welcome to stay here with us in this small, warm corner of the internet. Subscribing costs nothing and helps this quiet channel keep going, but honestly, the only thing that matters right now is that you get comfortable. Let your shoulders drop, let your jaw unclench, let your eyes rest, even if they are still open. We begin, as the cat always does, with the sound itself. Part 1. The sound itself. Fact 1. A cat's purr is not one single note, but two, layered together. Most people hear it as a single continuous hum, but if you slow it down, you find that a cat purrs on both the inhale and the exhale, without a break between them. Almost every other sound an animal makes, a bark, a meow, a human word, happens only on the outward breath. You have to pause, briefly, to breathe in again. A cat's purr does not pause. It simply keeps going, in and out, like a small engine that never stalls. Think of it like a wheel that keeps turning even as the cart changes direction, never quite stopping at the top or the bottom. That continuous, breath-spanning hum is part of what makes a purr feel so endless, so soothing, so unlike ordinary speech, which always has to stop to refill itself. Lying there, listening, you may never have noticed that gap being missing. But your body may have felt it anyway, that sense of an unbroken sound, a small motor content to run forever. And that raises the first real question of the night. How exactly does something so small produce a sound so steady? Fact 2. A cat's purr is remarkably low for such a small animal. Typically, a domestic cat purrs somewhere between 20 and 30 cycles per second, a frequency lower than the lowest, deepest notes a grown human voice can produce. A cat weighing only a few kilograms, with a larynx smaller than a walnut, is making a sound that by all ordinary expectation should belong to something far larger. Picture a small handbell and a large church bell. Ordinarily, the small bell rings high and light, the large one low and heavy. A purring cat is, acoustically, the small bell somehow producing the low, resonant hum of the large one. For a long time, this size mismatch puzzled the scientists who studied it closely. It is a small, strange contradiction tucked inside an animal you may have held in your own two hands. A tiny frame, producing a tone that seems to come from somewhere much larger, much older, much deeper, and that puzzle, it turns out, would not be solved easily. Fact 3. For decades, scientists believed purring required constant, active effort from the brain. The long-standing theory held that a cat's brain sent rapid, repeating signals down the nerves to the muscles around the voice box, causing them to twitch open and shut, roughly 30 times a second, and that this constant neural drumbeat was what created the purr. Under this theory, purring was thought to be a bit like a hand held out, deliberately tapping a rhythm on a table, over and over, never stopping, never resting. It made sense, at the time. It fit what was known about how other sounds are made, and it explained why a sleeping cat might stop purring the moment it slipped into a deeper stage of rest, since the brain's rhythmic signal, in that theory, would simply pause. But explanations that make sense are not always explanations that are true. And in October of 2023, a small team of researchers in Austria decided to look at the cat's larynx far more closely than anyone had before, and what they found did not fit the old story at all. Fact 4. In 2023, researchers discovered a small structure that may let cats purr without any active effort at all. A team led by voice scientist Christian Herbst examined the larynx tissue of cats and found something the old theory had not accounted for: small fibrous pads sitting within the vocal folds themselves. When air moved past these pads in the lab, even without any nerve signal, without any brain telling the muscles to twitch, the tissue still produced a low, steady, purr-like vibration on its own. It is a little like discovering that a flag does not need someone standing there flapping it by hand, that the shape of the fabric itself, catching the wind just right, can make it ripple steadily without any hand at all. The pads, positioned exactly where they are, seem to let a simple, steady stream of air turn into that same slow, resonant hum, almost automatically. This does not mean the brain plays no role. Cats can clearly start and stop purring somewhat at will, but it suggests the mechanism itself, once triggered, may not need constant, active control to keep going, which is a strange and rather beautiful thought, a body built to hum almost by accident of its own design. Fact 5. The sound closest to a cat's purr, in human terms, is something called vocal fry. You have almost certainly heard vocal fry before, that low, creaky, crackling quality some human voices take on at the very bottom of their range, often at the end of a sentence when the breath is running low. Researchers studying the 2023 discovery noted that the physics behind a cat's purr resembles this same creaky, low-effort kind of sound production, tissue vibrating loosely and passively, rather than being actively, tightly controlled. Imagine the difference between blowing hard and steadily into a trumpet, which takes real, ongoing effort, versus letting a loose paper straw flutter gently in a breeze, needing almost no effort to keep going once it starts. A purr, in this newer understanding, may be closer to the fluttering straw than to the trumpet. It is a small, humbling parallel that the sound so many of us find most soothing in the world might share its basic physics with a vocal quirk that, in a human voice, often goes almost unnoticed. Two very different animals converging quietly on the same trick of loose and easy sound. Fact 6. Purring is one of the very first sounds a kitten ever makes, arriving before sight or hearing even fully develop. Kittens are born blind, their eyes sealed shut, and their ear canals are not yet fully open either. And yet, within just a few days of birth, sometimes within hours, they can already purr. A newborn kitten, unable to see its mother, unable to hear her clearly, can still find her and be found by her through touch and through that low, steady vibration passing between their two small bodies. Picture two people in a completely dark room, unable to speak a shared language, finding each other simply by one of them humming softly and the other feeling that hum through the floor. That is close to what is happening between a nursing kitten and its mother, a signal that needs no eyes and no fully formed ears, only closeness and touch. It suggests that whatever purring is, whatever mechanism eventually produces it, it may be one of the oldest, most basic forms of contact a cat ever learns, older, even, than sight of the world around it. Fact 7. A kitten's purr, in its first days, may serve as a locating signal, not a sign of contentment at all. Because a newborn kitten cannot yet see its mother across even a short distance, some researchers believe that the vibration of purring, felt through direct bodily contact during nursing, helps kitten and mother locate and recognize one another in the crowded, wriggling dark of a litter. It is less, "I am happy," in this earliest stage, and more, "I am here, I am here, I am here," repeated in a language made entirely of touch. Think of a lighthouse that works not through light, but through a low, continuous hum you can only feel once you are close enough to touch its base. That is a strange kind of signal, one that only works at close range, between bodies already pressed together, rather than reaching out across any distance. It reframes the purr a little, doesn't it? Not first a sound of comfort given, but a sound of connection sought, a small creature saying, in the only language available to it, simply, "Do not lose me here." Fact 8. Purring almost certainly predates the split between many branches of the cat family tree. Purring is not unique to the house cat curled beside you. Many small wild cats purr as well. Cheetahs, pumas, ocelots, servals, and a wide range of others scattered across the world. Because this trait appears across so many different, distantly related branches of the cat family, scientists believe purring likely evolved a very long time ago in some shared ancestor, long before the house cat as we know it ever existed. Picture a single old tree with branches spreading out in every direction, each branch eventually growing its own separate cats, its own separate habitats, its own separate lives. And yet, tucked into nearly every one of those branches, the same small trick survives, a low, steady hum, passed down and kept, generation after generation, species after species. It means that the sound resting beside you tonight is not a modern invention. It is something ancient, carried forward through millions of years and countless branching paths, arriving finally, almost unchanged, in your own quiet room. Fact 9. Curiously, the very largest cats, lions, tigers, leopards, and jaguars cannot purr at all. Instead, these 4 cats can roar, a sound no small house cat has ever produced. The difference comes down to a single small structure in the throat called the hyoid bone. In lions, tigers, leopards, and jaguars, part of this bone stays flexible, unhardened, cartilage rather than solid bone, and that flexibility is exactly what allows the deep, powerful, carrying roar. But that same flexible structure makes the kind of continuous, steady purring vibration essentially impossible for them. In cats that purr, including your own cat, and also cheetahs, pumas, and snow leopards among the larger wild cats, that same bone is instead fully hardened, fully rigid, all the way through, and it is this rigidity that allows the smooth, continuous vibration of a purr at the cost of ever producing a true roar. It is one small bone, deciding almost everything, a fork in the road that split the cat family into 2 very different vocal lives, the roarers and the purrers, unable to ever trade places, unable to ever borrow the other's voice. Fact 10. Cheetahs, the fastest cats on land, are also among the largest cats that can purr. Because their hyoid bone remains fully hardened, cheetahs retain the ability to purr even at a size far larger than any house cat, and they do, often quite loudly, especially while feeling calm, or while grooming a companion, or while resting after a hunt. A cheetah's purr can be startlingly audible, a low, rolling hum coming from an animal built, in every other way, for explosive, silent speed. It is a strange contrast to hold in mind, an animal capable of accelerating faster than most sports cars, capable of near total silence while stalking, and yet also capable of this same old, slow, contented hum, the very same basic sound that a small house cat makes on a windowsill. Speed and stillness, it turns out, are not opposites after all, not in the body of a cat. The same creature that can outrun almost anything alive can also, in a quiet moment, simply lie down and hum, which brings us, gently, to the question of what that hum is actually trying to say. And here, the story becomes even more surprising than we've let on so far. Part 2. Not just happiness. Fact 11. Cats do not only purr when they are happy. It would be easy to assume that a purring cat is, by definition, a content one, and often that is exactly true. But veterinarians and behaviorists have long noted that cats also purr while frightened, while in pain, while giving birth, and even, in some documented cases, while dying. The sound that soothes us so reliably is, it turns out, not a simple signal of joy at all, but something closer to a tool the cat reaches for across a much wider range of difficult moments. Think of a person humming quietly to themselves, not because they are happy, but because the humming itself helps steady their breathing during something hard, a long wait in a hospital room, a nervous walk down an unfamiliar street. The tune is the same whether the moment behind it is good or bad. It is the humming that matters, not the mood that triggered it. So the next time you hear a cat purring in an unfamiliar place, a vet's office, a car, a moment of visible tension, it may be worth remembering that sound may not mean everything is fine. It may mean the cat is trying, in the only way it knows, to make things fine. Fact 12. One leading theory holds that purring may be a form of self-soothing, not so different from a person taking slow, deliberate breaths. Because purring appears in moments of stress, injury, and fear, just as often as in moments of comfort, some researchers have proposed that the act of purring itself, the physical vibration, the steady rhythm, may help calm the cat's own nervous system, regardless of what caused the purring to start. In this view, a purr is less a report of the cat's mood and more a tool the cat's body reaches for to manage it. Picture rocking gently in a chair when you are anxious, not because the chair fixes the underlying problem, but because the steady, repetitive motion itself has a calming effect on the body, almost independent of the mind's worries. A purring cat, under this theory, may be doing something quite similar, using a physical rhythm to steady itself from the inside. It is a gentler, more complicated picture than purring means happy. It suggests a small animal, in its own quiet way, practicing something very close to what we might call self-regulation, long before any of us had a word for it. Fact 13. Some researchers have proposed that low-frequency purring vibrations may support bone and tissue healing, though the science remains genuinely unsettled. The idea traces back to an observation that many purring frequencies, roughly in the range of 25 to 150 cycles per second, overlap with frequencies that some studies have linked to improved bone density and tissue repair in other contexts, including certain vibration therapies used in human medicine. Combined with the odd fact that cats seem to purr while healing from injury, and even rest less than many similarly sized animals despite this, some scientists have wondered whether purring might function as a kind of built-in, low-cost physical therapy. It is a lovely idea, a small internal machine quietly working on repair even while its owner simply rests. Imagine a house that hums gently while it settles after being built, and the humming itself somehow helping the walls set true. But it is important to say plainly, this remains a hypothesis, not a settled fact. It has not been proven that purring causes healing, only that an intriguing overlap exists, one that continues to invite careful, ongoing research rather than firm conclusions. Fact 14. A cat's most persuasive purr is not one purr at all, but two sounds layered together. In 2009, researcher Karen McComb and her team at the University of Sussex discovered that when cats are soliciting food, particularly from a sleeping or distracted owner, their purr often contains a second, higher-pitched sound embedded within it, one that closely resembles the frequency of a human infant's cry. When McComb played recordings for volunteers, including people with no cat experience at all, they consistently rated these solicitation purrs as more urgent and, honestly, more difficult to ignore than an ordinary purr. Picture a melody with a second, quieter melody hidden just underneath it, one your conscious mind may never fully notice, and yet your body still responds to. That is close to what is happening here. A low, familiar purr with a thin thread of something that sounds almost exactly like a hungry, crying baby woven through it. Whether or not the cat consciously intends this effect, the result is remarkably effective. It is very hard to sleep through and harder still to ignore, which may be exactly, evolutionarily speaking, the point. Fact 15. When researchers digitally removed that hidden high-pitched layer from recordings, listeners could no longer tell the difference between an urgent purr and an ordinary one. This detail matters because it confirms the effect is not simply imagined or anecdotal. In McComb's study, once that embedded higher frequency, sitting around the same pitch as middle G on a piano, was stripped out of the recording, volunteers rated the remaining purr as calm and pleasant, indistinguishable from any other contented purring. Put the hidden layer back in, and the urgency returned immediately. It is a bit like discovering that a single hidden ingredient, undetectable on its own, was responsible for the whole flavor of a dish all along. Remove it, and something ordinary remains. Add it back, and the original, unmistakable effect returns at once. It suggests that somewhere in the shared history of cats and humans, a sound evolved that reaches directly into something old and automatic in us, a response built, originally, for the cries of our own infants, quietly borrowed, or perhaps discovered, by a species that has spent thousands of years living closely beside us. Fact 16. Not every cat produces this embedded, high-pitched solicitation purr, and some seem to rely on it far more than others. McComb's research noted meaningful variation between individual cats. Some produced the layered, urgent-sounding purr regularly, especially cats living in close, one-on-one relationships with a single owner, while others rarely or never did. This suggests the trait may be shaped, at least partly, by each cat's individual life and relationship history, rather than being a fixed, universal cat behavior. Think of it the way two different people might learn, over years together, two entirely different tones of voice for asking the same simple favor. One learning to ask sweetly, another learning that urgency works better, each shaped by what actually got a response in their own particular life. It is a small reminder that cats, so often treated as a single predictable category, are in fact enormous individuals, each one arriving at its own private strategies, its own particular voice, shaped quietly by whoever happens to be listening on the other end. Fact 17. Purring costs a cat very little energy compared to almost any other sustained behavior. Unlike running, climbing, or even prolonged meowing, purring uses a remarkably small amount of metabolic energy to maintain, which is part of why an injured, exhausted, or elderly cat, an animal with very little energy to spare, can still purr for long stretches without visible strain. It is, in effect, one of the cheapest sounds a cat's body knows how to make. Picture the difference between running up a flight of stairs and simply humming a tune while sitting still. One taxes the whole body, the other barely registers as effort at all. A cat recovering from illness may not have the energy to walk across a room, and yet it may still be able to purr steadily for an hour. This low cost may be part of why purring shows up in so many different, seemingly contradictory situations: birth, injury, comfort, fear. It is simply always available, a tool requiring almost nothing, ready to be used in whatever moment calls for it. Fact 18. Cats are not the only mammals capable of a purr-like, continuous vibrating sound. Raccoons, for instance, produce a distinctly similar continuous humming sound, particularly between mothers and young, and so do some species of mongoose, genets, and even guinea pigs, which many owners describe as purring softly while being gently stroked. These animals are not closely related to cats at all, separated by tens of millions of years of evolution, and yet something about the usefulness of a steady, low, continuous vibration seems to have been discovered independently more than once. Picture several unrelated inventors working in completely different countries, unaware of one another, arriving at the very same simple, useful design, not because they copied each other, but because the design itself simply works so well that more than one mind found its way there separately. It suggests that whatever purring does for the animals that make it, whether comfort, connection, or self-soothing, it is not a strange quirk unique to cats. It may be one of nature's genuinely good ideas, quietly rediscovered again and again across very different branches of the animal world. Fact 19. A cat can purr with its mouth almost completely closed without needing to open its jaw at all. Unlike meowing, which requires an open mouth to shape the sound, purring can happen with the lips gently closed, barely parted, sometimes even while a cat is eating or resting its head flat against a pillow. The vibration travels outward regardless, through the throat, through the chest, through whatever surface the cat happens to be resting against. Think of a hand resting on a tabletop while, somewhere beneath the floor, a washing machine runs its cycle 2 rooms away, the low hum reaching your palm, not through the air at all, but straight through the solid structure connecting you both. Lean your head against a purring cat's side, and you are feeling something very similar, a vibration passed directly from body to body, needing no open mouth, no real gap in the air to reach you at all. It is part of why a purr feels so intimate, so different from any spoken sound. It does not need to travel through open air to reach you. It only needs contact, and it is already there. Fact 20. Some cats develop what caretakers describe as a nearly silent purr, one felt far more than it is heard. Particularly in older cats, or cats with certain health conditions, the purr can become quieter over time, sometimes reduced to little more than a faint tremor, detectable mainly by resting a hand directly against the cat's side or throat. Caretakers of elderly or ill cats often describe learning to check for this quiet vibration specifically, since the sound alone may no longer carry across a room the way it once did. It is a small, tender image, a caretaker leaning in close, palm against warm fur, searching not for a sound at all, but for a feeling, a faint, steady hum still going, quietly, underneath everything else. And it leads, gently, to a wider question, one we have circled without quite landing on yet. If purring can happen almost silently, almost invisibly, entirely by touch alone, then what else is a cat's body quietly telling us, all the time, through senses we barely think to notice? Part 3. The rest of the senses. Fact 21. A cat's whiskers are not simple hairs, but finely tuned sensory organs, rooted 3 times deeper than ordinary fur. Each whisker, formerly called a vibrissa, is embedded in a follicle packed with nerve endings and surrounded by a small pool of blood vessels that seems to amplify even the slightest movement, sending detailed signals straight to the brain. Ordinary fur, by comparison, sits in a much shallower, far less sensitive follicle. This is why even the lightest touch to a single whisker produces an immediate, almost reflexive reaction, a flinch, a blink, a sudden turn of the head. Picture the difference between a piece of string lying loosely across your palm, barely noticeable, and a single hair being pulled taut against a sensitive fingertip, impossible to ignore. That is roughly the gap between ordinary fur and a whisker, in terms of how deeply, how urgently, the body pays attention. It means that every twitch of a cat's whiskers, so easy to overlook as simple decoration, is in fact a small, constant stream of detailed information arriving from the world, read by the cat, mostly, before you have even noticed anything happened at all. Fact 22. Cat whiskers help measure whether a gap is safe to pass through, without any need to look. The whiskers on either side of a cat's face typically span roughly the width of its own body, and by brushing them lightly against the edges of an opening, a doorway, a fence gap, a narrow space between furniture, a cat can judge in an instant whether its body will fit through, often without breaking stride to check visually at all. Think of a person running a hand along a dark hallway wall, feeling for the edges of a doorway before ever seeing it clearly, trusting touch alone to judge the width. A cat does something remarkably similar, but automatically, continuously, using whiskers as a kind of built-in measuring tape it carries everywhere, permanently attached to its own face. It is a small, elegant piece of engineering, solved by evolution long before any measuring tool existed. A body that simply knows its own width, and checks the world against it, silently, dozens of times a day. Fact 23. In near total darkness, a cat can see using roughly 6 times less light than a human needs. This advantage comes largely from a structure called the tapetum lucidum, a reflective layer sitting just behind the retina, which bounces incoming light back through the light-sensing cells a second time, giving them, in effect, 2 chances to catch what little light is available. This same layer is also responsible for the eerie glow you sometimes see in a cat's eyes under a flashlight or headlights at night. Picture a small mirror placed at the back of a dim room, catching whatever faint light slips in and bouncing it back across the space one more time, doubling every stray beam's chance of being noticed. That mirror, tucked behind a cat's retina, is quietly doing exactly that. Every night, in every dark room the cat moves through. It does not mean cats can see in complete, total blackness. No animal truly can. But in the low, gray dimness, where a human would be groping blindly along a wall, a cat can often move with something close to full confidence. Fact 24. A cat's hearing range stretches roughly an octave and a half higher than a human's, reaching frequencies most rodents live inside of. Where human hearing generally tops out somewhere near 20,000 cycles per second, a cat's hearing extends up towards 60 or even 70,000, well into a range that includes the high, thin ultrasonic calls many small rodents use to communicate with one another. In effect, cats can hear a private conversation happening between mice that the mice themselves may have assumed was silent to any nearby predator. Picture a radio capable of picking up a station that, as far as most listeners know, doesn't even exist, a frequency assumed private, assumed safe, quietly overheard anyway. That is roughly the position every hidden rodent finds itself in, without ever quite realizing it, whenever a cat is nearby. It reframes something about the quiet, watchful stillness of a resting cat. Even doing nothing, even lying perfectly still, its ears may be catching a whole layer of sound the rest of the room has no access to at all. Fact 25. A cat's outer ears can rotate independently, each one able to swivel roughly 180 degrees on its own. Each ear is controlled by a set of small, highly responsive muscles, allowing a cat to point one ear forward and the other backward at the same time, tracking two separate sounds simultaneously without needing to turn its head at all. This gives a resting cat a kind of passive, always-on surveillance of a room, gathering directional sound from nearly every angle without ever breaking its stillness. Think of two small satellite dishes, each independently steerable, quietly rotating to track two different signals at once, while the main body beneath them stays perfectly, deliberately still. That is close to what is happening atop a cat's head, even during what looks, from the outside, like complete and total rest. It is one more small piece of evidence for something worth remembering tonight, that stillness, in a cat, is rarely emptiness. Very often, it is simply attention, quietly, efficiently, pointed in more than one direction at once. Fact 26. Cats cannot taste sweetness at all, missing the specific genetic machinery that most mammals rely on. Researchers have found that cats lack a functioning version of the gene responsible for detecting sugar on the tongue, a trait shared by all cats, wild and domestic alike. Where a dog might be drawn towards something sweet out of simple taste preference, a cat's interest in food is guided almost entirely by smell, texture, and the taste of specific fats and amino acids instead. Sugar itself is, to a cat, essentially invisible. Imagine an entire flavor, one that shapes so much of how humans choose food, simply subtracted from the world. A whole category of experience a cat has never once had access to, not through discipline or preference, but because the door to it was never there to begin with. It is a strange thing to sit with, that the animal curled beside you tonight has never once tasted anything sweet, not a single time in its entire life, and has, by every appearance, never once missed it. Fact 27. A cat's sense of smell relies on roughly 200 million scent receptors, many times more than a human's 5 or 6 million. This dramatically more sensitive nose allows a cat to build a detailed, layered picture of its surroundings, almost entirely through scent, recognizing individual people, other animals, and even subtle changes in its own environment, long before any visual or auditory cue would reveal the same information. Picture two rooms, one lit by a single dim bulb, the other lit by hundreds of small, precise lamps, each illuminating a slightly different corner. Both rooms technically have light, but only one of them lets you see everything at once, in full, layered detail. A cat's nose experiences the world roughly like that second room, richly, continuously illuminated, in a sense we can only partly imagine. It means the home you think you know so well, every room memorized by sight, is, to the cat sharing it with you, an entirely different and far more detailed place, mapped out in a language made almost entirely of smell. Fact 28. Cats possess a second, entirely separate scent organ, tucked into the roof of the mouth, used only for the most important smells. Called the vomeronasal organ, or Jacobson's organ, this structure sits just behind the front teeth and connects directly to a region of the brain associated with behavior and reproduction, bypassing the ordinary smell processing pathway almost entirely. When a cat encounters an especially significant scent, often left by another cat, it will sometimes open its mouth slightly, lips parted, face briefly frozen in what looks almost like a grimace, drawing air directly across this organ. That particular expression, called the Flehman response, can look, to an unfamiliar eye, almost comical, a cat wrinkling its face as though it has smelled something faintly unpleasant. In truth, the opposite is closer to the point. The cat has found something worth a second, much closer form of investigation, a smell important enough to warrant its own dedicated organ, its own private sense, separate from all the others. It is a small reminder that even the senses we assume we understand completely, smell, taste, touch, may contain entire separate channels in another animal, running quietly alongside the ordinary ones, reserved only for the things that matter most. Fact 29. A cat's field of vision spans roughly 200 degrees, wider than a human's, though it sacrifices some fine detail in exchange. Where human eyes are built for sharp, detailed focus, especially useful for reading or close, careful work, a cat's eyes are built instead to prioritize movement and breadth of view, excellent for noticing the smallest flicker of motion at the very edge of a room, less useful for making out fine, static detail up close. A cat may struggle to recognize a completely motionless object sitting just a few feet away, while catching, instantly, the faintest twitch of a moth on the far side of the room. Picture two different kinds of cameras, one built with a narrow, extremely sharp zoom lens, the other built with a wide, sweeping lens tuned specifically to catch motion. Each is excellent at its own particular job and rather poor at the other. A cat's eyes and a human's are simply built from two very different sets of priorities, shaped by two very different evolutionary lives. It is part of why a cat will sometimes seem to stare directly through a toy lying perfectly still, only to snap instantly alert the moment it moves even slightly. Stillness, to a cat's eye, can sometimes mean nearly nothing at all. Fact 30. Taken together, a cat's senses do not simply outperform ours, they build an entirely different kind of picture of the same room. More sensitive smell, a wider hearing range that reaches into ultrasonic territory, whiskers that measure space by touch, eyes tuned for motion over detail, and a night vision system built to make use of nearly every scrap of available light. Together, these senses do not just improve on the human experience of a space. They construct something closer to a wholly separate experience, layered with information a human moving through the very same room would never notice at all. Think of two people standing in the very same museum gallery, one seeing only the paintings on the wall, the other somehow also feeling every vibration in the floor, smelling every visitor who passed through hours earlier, hearing conversations happening 2 rooms away. Both are standing in the identical physical space, and yet, in every meaningful sense, they are not experiencing the same place at all. And that thought carries us naturally toward the body these senses are attached to, a small, remarkably built frame, capable of things that go far beyond simply seeing, hearing, and smelling the world more sharply than we do. Part 4. A body built for falling and for landing. Fact 31. A cat's spine contains roughly 60 vertebrae, nearly double the number found in a human back. While a human spine contains around 33 vertebrae, a cat's contains somewhere close to 60, and unlike ours, they are cushioned by unusually elastic discs that allow far greater flexibility along the entire length of the spine. This is what allows a cat to arch, twist, curl into a near-perfect circle, or stretch out to nearly double its resting length. Movements a human spine simply has no structural capacity for. Picture the difference between a rigid wooden ruler and a length of soft, flexible rubber tubing, both roughly the same length, but only one of them can bend smoothly into a full loop without snapping. A cat's spine behaves far more like that second material, built not for rigid support alone, but for genuine, fluid range of motion. It is part of why a resting cat can seem to fold itself into almost impossibly small, tidy shapes, tucked into a bowl, a sink, a shoebox, far too small by any reasonable measure. The spine beneath all that fur was simply built differently, from the very beginning, for exactly this kind of flexibility. Fact 32. That same flexible spine is the key to one of the most studied reflexes in the animal world, the cat's ability to right itself mid-fall. Formerly called the righting reflex, this ability lets a falling cat, even one dropped from an upside-down position with no initial spin at all, twist its body in mid-air and land, in the great majority of cases, feet first. The reflex typically begins developing within the first few weeks of a kitten's life and is usually fully present by around 6 or 7 weeks of age. Picture a gymnast in mid-air, adjusting their body position purely through subtle shifts in posture, without ever pushing off from anything solid, using nothing but their own body's internal rotation to change how they land. A falling cat performs a version of this same trick, almost entirely automatically, guided by reflex rather than conscious thought. It is one of the most quietly remarkable things about an ordinary house cat, a built-in physical skill so refined that physicists, not just biologists, have spent real time trying to fully explain exactly how it works. Fact 33. The writing reflex genuinely puzzled physicists for over a century because it seemed, briefly, to break a basic law of motion. The core problem, sometimes called the falling cat problem, is this: a body in mid-air with no outside force acting on it should not be able to change its total rotation according to the ordinary conservation of angular momentum. And yet, cats clearly do rotate themselves in mid-air, starting from a position with zero net spin and ending in a completely different orientation. For a long time, this looked, on the surface, almost like a contradiction. The resolution, eventually worked out through careful study, including early photographic experiments in the 1800s, turns out to lie in the cat's flexible spine. By twisting its front half and back half in careful, opposite sequence, tucking one half in while extending the other, a cat can rotate each section separately without ever violating the overall law at all. The same way a diver or gymnast uses careful limb positioning to control a spin without breaking any laws of physics either. Picture two people on a spinning office chair, one pulling their arms in tight while the other extends theirs outward, changing how fast each half of a shared system rotates, without any outside push at all. A falling cat performs a whole-body version of exactly this trick, solved by instinct alone, long before any human worked out the mathematics behind it. Fact 34. Despite popular belief, cats do not always land safely, and the physics involved is more delicate than it first appears. Veterinarians who study what is sometimes called high-rise syndrome, injuries from falls out of windows or balconies, have found a curious pattern. Injuries can actually become somewhat less severe at greater heights, up to a point, likely because a falling cat needs a certain minimum distance to fully complete its righting maneuver and relax its body into a more shock-absorbing position before landing. A very short fall may not leave enough time for any of this to happen at all. Think of a diver who needs a certain minimum height above the water to properly orient their body before entry. Too short a drop, and there simply isn't time to get into the right position first. A cat's remarkable reflex needs a small window of time and space to fully do its work, and without that window, even a skilled, naturally gifted body can be caught off guard. It is a useful, gentle correction to an old myth, less, cats always land safely, and more, cats have evolved a genuinely remarkable tool for landing well, one that, like any tool, still has its real and important limits. Fact 35. A cat's inner ear contains an especially finely tuned vestibular system, the body's core sense of balance and spatial orientation. This structure, made up of tiny fluid-filled canals, constantly tracks the position and movement of the head, feeding that information almost instantly to the brain. It is this system, working closely alongside the flexible spine, that allows a cat to know, at every single moment, precisely which way is down, even while spinning through open air with no fixed reference point in sight at all. Picture a small, internal spirit level, the kind used to check whether a shelf is perfectly straight, except this one is alive, constantly adjusting, feeding a steady stream of updates directly into the brain, dozens of times each second, without the cat ever needing to consciously think about it. It means that even a cat simply walking calmly along the narrow top edge of a fence is relying on this same quiet, constant internal sense, one working continuously in the background, so smoothly and so reliably that it is very easy, watching from below, to forget it is even there at all. Fact 36. A cat's tail plays a real active role in balance, working almost like a counterweight. While cats without tails, including certain breeds born naturally without one, are still generally able to balance perfectly well, a tailed cat uses subtle shifts in tail position to help fine-tune its balance during quick turns, narrow walks, and sudden landings. Watch closely as a cat walks along a narrow railing, and you will often see the tail shifting gently from side to side, adjusting in near real time. Picture a tightrope walker's long balancing pole, extended and shifted constantly to counteract even small wobbles in the body beneath it. A cat's tail performs a smaller, built-in version of that exact same function, a living counterweight, always slightly adjusting, always quietly working to keep the rest of the body steady. It is one more small, easy-to-overlook piece of a much larger system: senses, spine, inner ear, and tail, all working together, continuously, beneath what so often looks, from the outside, like nothing more than a cat simply walking calmly across a room. Fact 37. A cat's paw pads contain sensitive receptors capable of detecting extremely fine vibrations in the ground. These vibration-sensitive nerve endings allow a cat to feel subtle movement through a floor or surface, useful for detecting the faint approach of prey, or even, some researchers suspect, subtle environmental changes like distant sound or activity elsewhere in a home. This same sensitivity is part of why a cat can often seem to know someone is approaching before any door has opened or any footstep has become clearly audible. Picture standing barefoot on a wooden floor and feeling, faintly, the rhythm of someone walking in a room 2 doors down, a vibration reaching your feet slightly before any sound reaches your ears. A cat experiences a stronger, more finely tuned version of that same sensation nearly all the time, a floor that is never quite silent to a paw built to listen through it. It adds one more quiet layer to everything else, a body reading the world not only through eyes, ears, nose, and whiskers, but even through the simple, unremarkable act of standing still on the ground. Fact 38. Cats are digitigrade, meaning they walk on their toes rather than the flat of their foot, much like a human walking permanently on tiptoe. What looks, from the outside, like a cat's ankle bending backward partway up the leg is, anatomically, closer to the heel, lifted permanently off the ground. This toe-walking posture is part of what gives cats their notably quiet, precise, almost silent way of moving, since less of the foot makes contact with the ground at any given moment, and what does make contact is padded, soft, and carefully placed. Picture the difference between walking normally across a creaky wooden floor and walking carefully across that same floor on the very tips of your toes, weight controlled, contact minimized, sound reduced almost to nothing. A cat lives its entire life in that second, quieter posture, without ever having to think about it or practice it at all. It is part of why a cat can cross a room and arrive at your side with no warning at all, not because it moved especially slowly, but because the very structure of its stride was built from the ground up for quiet. Fact 39. A cat's collarbone is not connected to the rest of its skeleton the way a human's is, floating instead, embedded loosely in muscle. Unlike a human collarbone, firmly joined at both ends to the shoulder and the breastbone, a cat's collarbone is small, reduced, and largely disconnected, held in place mostly by surrounding muscle rather than a rigid joint. This unusual structure is a major part of what allows a cat to squeeze its entire body through gaps that, at first glance, look far too narrow to possibly fit through. Picture a doorway just slightly narrower than a shoulder width, one that would stop a person completely, and a body clever enough to simply let that shoulder fold slightly inward, unlocked from any rigid frame, passing through anyway. A cat's shoulders can do almost exactly that, thanks to a collarbone with nothing solid holding it firmly in place. There is an old, somewhat true saying passed around among cat owners that if a cat's head fits through a gap, the rest of the body usually will follow. This is a fair part of the reason why a skeleton built with just enough looseness in just the right place to make that small trick possible. Fact 40. Altogether, a cat's body is less a single fixed shape than a collection of loosely connected, highly adjustable parts built for exactly this kind of ongoing negotiation with the physical world. A flexible spine that folds and twists, an inner ear that never stops calculating which way is down, a tail that shifts constantly to hold balance steady, paws that read the faintest vibration in the floor, a collarbone willing to give way, quietly, rather than block a narrow passage. None of these features exist in isolation. They work together, continuously, mostly outside of any conscious effort at all, to produce something that looks, from the outside, like effortless, fluid grace. Picture an orchestra where every single player is following their own quiet, independent instinct, and yet somehow, without any conductor at all, the result comes together as one smooth, coherent piece of music. That is close to what is happening every single moment inside the body of a cat, simply walking across a room, or leaping, without hesitation, onto a shelf barely wide enough to hold it. And having spent this time with the body, it seems only fair, now, to turn back the clock even further, past this particular cat, past its particular life, and ask a much older question, one about where all of this, the purring, the senses, the flexible, quietly negotiating body, first began, and how it came to end up here, tonight, resting so easily beside you. Part 5. 10,000 Years of a Quiet Choice. Fact 41. Cats were never truly domesticated the way most other animals were. They largely domesticated themselves. Unlike dogs, cattle, or horses, animals actively bred and selected by humans over many generations for specific traits and tasks. Genetic evidence suggests that early cats simply began living near human settlements on their own terms, drawn by the abundance of rodents gathering around stored grain, and gradually grew comfortable enough with human presence to stay. No one selected them for size, or temperament, or usefulness in the way early farmers selected the calmest cattle or the most obedient dogs. Picture a wild guest who wandered into a party uninvited, found the food excellent, and simply decided, gradually, over many visits, to stay, rather than a guest carefully chosen and formally invited from the very start. As one geneticist studying this history put it plainly, cats, in this sense, arrived already close to perfect for the role, needing very little change at all to fit comfortably into human life. It reframes the entire relationship in a quiet but meaningful way. The cat sleeping beside you tonight is not, at its core, the product of careful human design. It is the descendant of a wild animal that looked at early human life and chose it. Fact 42. This quiet self-domestication appears to have happened along two separate paths, in two very different times and places. Genetic research tracing cat DNA across roughly 9,000 years of history has identified two major lineages. The first began in the Fertile Crescent region of Southwest Asia, roughly 8,000 years ago, where wildcats were drawn towards some of humanity's earliest farming settlements. The second began much later in ancient Egypt, and it was this Egyptian lineage, spreading gradually along trade and shipping routes, that eventually gave rise to the friendly, highly sociable cats that would go on to populate most of the modern world. Picture two separate rivers, beginning in entirely different mountains, flowing for thousands of years, along entirely different paths, and only much later, gradually merging into the same wide shared delta. That is roughly the shape of the modern house cat's ancestry, two distinct beginnings, eventually converging into the single, familiar animal curled up in homes across the entire world today. It means that the cat resting near you tonight carries, somewhere in its ancient genetic history, threads reaching back to two entirely different corners of the ancient world, quietly woven together over thousands of years, long before anyone was keeping careful written record of any of it. Fact 43. Remarkably, a domestic cat's genome remains extremely close to that of its wild ancestor, changed far less than most other domesticated animals. Where centuries of deliberate breeding have reshaped dogs into hundreds of wildly different shapes, sizes, and temperaments, cats have remained comparatively unchanged, both in body and in genetics, from the wild cats they descended from. Even now, a domestic cat can, in some regions, still interbreed with wild populations, something far less common among more heavily bred domestic species. Think of two old family photographs, one taken generations apart, showing a family transformed almost beyond recognition through the years, and another showing barely any visible change at all, the resemblance nearly perfect across the same span of time. The story of the modern cat looks far more like that second photograph, a creature that simply did not need to change very much, because it was already, in the researcher's own words, close to exactly right. It is part of why a house cat, for all its comfort curled on a couch, still carries so much of its wild ancestor within it, the same sharp reflexes, the same intense focus during play, the same body built underneath the softness for hunting. Fact 44. The now familiar tabby coat pattern, stripes and swirling markings across the fur, did not appear until surprisingly recently, sometime during the Middle Ages. For most of the long history of cats living alongside humans, coat patterns remained relatively close to the plain, tawny coloring of the wild cat ancestor. The distinctive banded and blotched tabby markings so many people now picture immediately when they imagine a cat only became common roughly 1,000 years ago or so, a genetic variation that spread and became widespread comparatively late in the overall story. Picture a familiar face in an old family photo lineage, present in every single generation for thousands of years, and then, quite suddenly, in one particular generation, gaining a distinctive new feature that quickly becomes associated with the whole family from then on. The tabby pattern is a little like that, a relatively late addition, layered onto a much older, much longer story. It is a small, useful correction to how most people picture the ancient cat. The stereotypical striped tabby pattern, so ordinary now, so instantly recognizable, would likely have looked genuinely unfamiliar to most of the earliest cats that ever lived, alongside early farmers, thousands of years before it ever appeared. Fact 45. In ancient Egypt, cats were not simply valued, they were treated as sacred, closely associated with the goddess Bastet. Bastet, often depicted with the head of a cat, was linked to protection, fertility, and the safeguarding of the home, and cats themselves were, for a long stretch of Egyptian history, protected by law, with the killing of a cat, even accidentally, carrying serious consequences. Wealthy households sometimes mummified beloved cats upon death, preparing them for the afterlife with the same careful ritual given to honored family members. Picture an animal, today mostly seen curled on a windowsill or chasing a laser pointer across a living room floor, once treated with a level of formal, religious reverence usually reserved for royalty or gods. It is a striking gap to sit with between how casually cats are regarded in so many homes today and how seriously an entire ancient civilization once regarded the very same animal. That reverence, as it turns out, extended even further than most people realize, deep into the practical, industrial scale of ancient Egyptian religious life, in ways that can feel almost startling by modern standards. Fact 46. Archaeologists have discovered enormous numbers of mummified cats in ancient Egypt, prepared as religious offerings on a scale far larger than most people imagine. At certain sacred sites, cat mummies were produced not only to honor individual beloved pets, but as formal votive offerings purchased by worshippers and dedicated to Bastet, not unlike lighting a candle in a place of worship today. Some archaeological excavations have uncovered vast underground galleries containing what researchers describe as hundreds of thousands of preserved cat remains, reflecting just how deeply woven into daily religious practice this reverence for cats truly was. Picture a practice so widespread, so deeply embedded into ordinary religious life, that it left behind not a handful of careful individual burials, but entire underground chambers filled, layer upon layer, with the physical evidence of centuries of devotion. It is a scale that is genuinely difficult to picture from the outside, an entire civilization's spiritual life, threaded so thoroughly through with the presence of cats. It is worth pausing gently here on just how long and how completely humans and cats have already shared their lives together, long before either of you, tonight, ever met. Fact 47. Unlike dogs, which humans actively bred over generations for specific working roles, cats were largely left, for most of history, to breed on their own terms. Dogs were shaped, deliberately and directly, into herders, guards, hunters, and companions, their bodies and temperaments reworked repeatedly by human hands across thousands of years. Cats, by contrast, were mostly left to select their own mates freely for the great majority of their shared history with humans, a much more hands-off, unhurried relationship, with formal breed development only really beginning in the last couple of centuries. Picture two different gardens, one carefully pruned and shaped by a gardener's hand for generations, guided deliberately into precise, intended forms, and another left mostly to grow according to its own wild instincts, only lightly, occasionally tended. Dogs and cats have grown, in a real sense, out of two very differently managed gardens, and it shows, plainly, in how differently the two species vary today. It helps explain something many cat owners quietly notice: a certain enduring independence, a sense that the cat beside them is a guest choosing to stay, rather than a creature carefully built, from the ground up, to obey. Fact 48. The word cat itself, and its many close relatives across dozens of languages, likely traces back to a shared, extremely old root word. Linguists have noted that variations of a very similar sounding word for cat appear across a strikingly wide range of unrelated language families, Latin's catus, Arabic's kitta, and many others bearing a close resemblance, suggesting the word, much like the animal itself, spread widely and early along ancient trade routes, carried alongside the cats themselves as they moved outward from their earliest domestication sites. Picture a single word traveling the very same trade roads, the very same ancient ships, as the small animals it was used to describe, both crossing unfamiliar borders together, both slowly becoming familiar in places that had never known either before. Language and animal, moving quietly together, across centuries, across continents. It is a small, easily overlooked kind of evidence, but a lovely one, that the closeness between cats and humans is old enough and thorough enough to have left its own faint fingerprint even in the words so many different people, in so many different places, still use today. Fact 49. For most of their shared history with humans, cats served an intensely practical purpose, protecting stored food from rodents, long before they were valued primarily as companions. Grain stores, granaries, and shipping vessels were all, for thousands of years, under constant threat from rodent populations capable of destroying enormous quantities of food. A cat's presence in these spaces was not sentimental at all. In its earliest chapters, it was economic, a working animal valued in much the same practical terms as a farm dog or a plow horse, its usefulness measured directly in grain saved. Picture an early ship's captain, thousands of years ago, keeping a cat aboard not out of any particular affection, but purely as functional cargo insurance, a small, quiet, effective form of pest control that happened to require no wages and very little care at all. That practical relationship, food protected, cat fed, and sheltered in return, was the entire foundation the far warmer relationship of later centuries would eventually be built upon. It is worth remembering, gently, tonight, as a cat rests purely for comfort's sake beside you, needing nothing from you but company, that this soft, easy affection is a fairly recent layer, added late, on top of a much older, far more practical partnership. Fact 50. Over the last 2 centuries, the relationship shifted decisively, from working animal toward companion, and formal cat breeds began to be deliberately developed for the very first time. Organized cat shows, breed standards, and selective breeding for specific traits, coat length, color, body shape, only really began in the 1800s and 1900s, a strikingly recent development compared to the many thousands of years cats had already spent living alongside humans. In this sense, the modern idea of a cat as primarily a beloved companion rather than a working pest control partner is a genuinely new chapter in an otherwise very old story. Picture a long, winding road, walked quietly for thousands of years, and then, only in its very final short stretch, suddenly widened, paved, given road signs and formal named destinations for the very first time. Nearly the entire journey happened before any of that structure existed at all. And so, tonight, when a cat curls beside you, purely for warmth, purely for company, asking nothing of you but your quiet presence, know that this particular, tender chapter of the story, cat as companion rather than worker, is one of the very newest pages in an otherwise ancient book, one that stretches back, quietly, for thousands and thousands of years before either of you arrived in it. Part 6. How Cats Talk to Us. Fact 51. Adult cats rarely meow at each other. They largely reserve this particular sound for communicating with humans. Kittens meow at their mothers, but this behavior typically fades as they mature. And among adult cats interacting with one another, meowing is relatively uncommon, replaced mostly by body language, scent marking, and quieter vocal sounds. Yet these same adult cats often meow readily, and often at the humans they live with, suggesting the behavior has, in a real sense, been specifically retained and adapted for that one particular relationship. Picture someone who, upon moving to a new country, quietly sets aside their childhood language while speaking with old friends from home, but keeps using it deliberately whenever they want to be understood by someone new. A cat's meow, aimed at you, may be something close to this, a form of communication mostly held onto, specifically, for the humans in its life. It is a small but genuinely touching thought that the sound you hear so often, that particular greeting at the door, that request near an empty food bowl, may exist largely because of you, shaped, refined, and kept alive across a cat's whole life, specifically for this one relationship. Fact 52. A cat's tail position and movement form one of the clearest, most reliable windows into its current mood. A tail held high, often with a gentle curve or slight quiver near the tip, generally signals confidence and friendly greeting. A tail low and tucked close to the body often signals fear or submission. A tail lashing sharply back and forth, by contrast, usually signals agitation or overstimulation, very much worth reading as a request for space rather than an invitation for more attention. Picture a flag raised at the top of a building, its exact position and movement instantly readable from a distance, telling anyone paying attention a great deal about the current situation inside, without a single word being spoken. A cat's tail functions remarkably similarly, a small, constant broadcast of internal state, visible the moment you know how to read it. Learning this particular signal well, The difference between a slow, gentle sway and a sharp, agitated lash can meaningfully change how well you understand a cat's needs in any given moment, often well before any other, less obvious sign appears at all. Fact 53. A slow, deliberate blink from a cat functions as a genuine gesture of trust, sometimes described informally as a kind of feline smile. In 2020, researchers at the University of Sussex studied this behavior formally and found that cats who received slow blinks from a familiar person were significantly more likely to slow blink back, and were also more likely to subsequently approach that same person, compared to cats who received a neutral, unblinking stare. Because closing the eyes, even briefly, leaves an animal genuinely more vulnerable. Offering that brief vulnerability voluntarily appears to function as a small, quiet signal of comfort and goodwill. Picture two strangers meeting for the first time, each one choosing, deliberately, to set down anything they were holding, hands open and empty, a small physical gesture that says, without any words at all, "I do not see you as a threat right now." A slow blink between a cat and a trusted person carries something close to that same quiet meaning. It means you can, quite literally, speak a little of this animal's own native language tonight, right where you are. Find a cat's gaze, soften your own eyes, and blink slowly, deliberately, and then simply wait. More often than you might expect, you will get a slow blink back. Fact 54. Kneading, the rhythmic pressing of front paws against a soft surface, traces back to nursing behavior learned in the earliest days of kittenhood. Nursing kittens instinctively press and knead against their mother's belly with their front paws, a motion believed to help encourage milk flow. Many adult cats retain this exact same motion for the rest of their lives, often performed on a soft blanket, a cushion, or a comfortable lap, generally in moments of contentment and ease, sometimes accompanied by purring, sometimes even by a faraway, half-closed expression. Picture an old, comforting childhood habit, thumb-sucking, a particular blanket held close, quietly carried forward into adulthood, not out of any real ongoing need, but because the motion itself still carries an old, deep sense of safety and comfort. Kneading appears to work in a remarkably similar way, a physical echo of infancy, resurfacing specifically in a cat's most relaxed, most trusting moments. It means that a cat kneading gently against your lap, claws sometimes lightly catching at fabric, back arched slightly with evident pleasure, is doing something genuinely tender, reaching back, in its body, if not consciously in its mind, to one of the very first comforts it ever knew. Fact 55. Cats communicate a great deal through scent marking, using scent glands located around the face, particularly near the cheeks, chin, and the base of the ears. When a cat rubs its face against a piece of furniture, a doorway, or a person's leg, it is depositing a small amount of scent from these glands, marking that object or that person as familiar, safe, and part of its own territory. This behavior, sometimes called bunting, is generally considered a mark of comfort and belonging, closer to a signature than a warning. Picture someone quietly leaving a small, personal token in a space they consider safely their own, a photograph on a desk, a favorite mug in a shared kitchen, a subtle but consistent way of saying, "This space includes me, and I belong here." A cat rubbing its cheek against your leg is doing something similar, marking you, in scent, as part of its own small, safe world. It means that when a cat headbutts your hand or rubs firmly along your shin, it is not simply seeking affection in that one particular moment. It is, in its own quiet way, filing you formally into the short and carefully guarded list of things it considers, unmistakably, its own. Fact 56. Some cats appear capable of noticing subtle changes in human health, though the underlying mechanism remains only partly understood. Owners and caretakers have long reported cats behaving differently around illness, becoming unusually clingy, restless, or attentive near a person who later turns out to be unwell. While rigorous scientific study of this ability in cats specifically remains limited compared to similar research in dogs, researchers generally suspect it relates to a cat's extraordinarily sensitive sense of smell, potentially picking up on subtle chemical changes in a person's scent, body temperature, or breathing pattern, changes far too faint for a human to ever consciously notice. Picture a smoke detector so finely calibrated it responds to the very faintest trace of smoke, long before any human nose in the room could possibly detect anything at all. A cat's nose, tuned to an entirely different but comparably fine level of sensitivity, may be doing something quite similar, picking up small, real signals well before any obvious symptom ever becomes visible to the people around it. It remains, for now, more careful, ongoing area of study than settled fact. But it adds one more small layer to a growing picture, a body sitting quietly beside you tonight, reading you far more closely and in far more channels than you may have ever fully realized. Fact 57. A cat's purr, its meow, its scent marking, and its careful, readable body language do not operate separately. They generally work together, layered into a single, more complete message. A cat approaching with a raised, gently curved tail, offering a slow blink and rubbing its cheek against your hand, is not sending three unrelated signals. It is sending one coherent, layered message built from several different channels at once, each reinforcing the others, each adding a small additional layer of clarity to the whole. Picture a letter written not only in careful words, but also in the particular paper chosen, the handwriting style, even the way it was folded before being handed over, every small detail adding its own quiet layer of meaning to the same overall message. A cat's greeting, taken as a whole, tail, eyes, scent, sound, works remarkably similarly, several small signals combining into one much richer communication. Learning to read all of these signals together, rather than any single one in isolation, is part of what it genuinely means to understand a cat well, a skill built slowly, gently, over the whole quiet arc of a shared life together. Fact 58. Cats can recognize their own name, and often the names of other cats or people in the household, even though they may choose, quite deliberately, not to respond every time. A study conducted in Japan in 2019 found that cats reliably showed a distinct behavioral response, a subtle ear or head movement, when they heard their own name spoken, compared to other similar-sounding words, even when the name was spoken by an unfamiliar voice. This response held Even though many cats, famously, do not reliably come when called, a gap researchers suggest may reflect motivation and independence far more than any lack of actual understanding. Picture someone at a party, clearly hearing their own name spoken from across a crowded room, and yet engaged in something else entirely, choosing quite deliberately not to turn around and respond just yet. Recognition and response, it turns out, are two genuinely separate things, and cats seem to hold a clear, confident grasp of the first, whatever they decide to do about the second. It is a small, slightly humbling thought, well worth sitting with tonight, that a cat quietly ignoring your call across the room is very likely not confused about who you are speaking to. It has simply, and quite deliberately, made its own separate choice about what to do next. Fact 59. Cats are highly attentive to human facial expressions and tone of voice, adjusting their own behavior in response, even without any formal training at all. Several studies have found that cats behave differently depending on a caregiver's emotional tone, showing more approach behavior toward a person speaking in a warm, positive tone, and more caution or hesitation around a tense or negative one. Some research even suggests cats use their owner's emotional reaction to an unfamiliar object or situation as a genuine guide for how to respond themselves, a behavior called social referencing, long studied closely in human infants. Picture a person walking into an unfamiliar room, glancing instinctively at a trusted friend's face before deciding whether the space feels safe or worth some caution. A cat, in an unfamiliar situation, appears to do something remarkably similar, checking a trusted person's expression and tone as one genuine, meaningful source of information about how to feel. It suggests a closer, more responsive kind of attention than cats are often given credit for, a small animal watching not just for direct commands, but for something closer to your entire emotional atmosphere, and quietly adjusting its own behavior to match it. Fact 60. Taken together, all of this, the tail, the blink, the kneading, the scent, the name recognition, the careful reading of tone, adds up to something worth pausing on tonight. Cats are not simple, and they are not silent. They are constantly communicating through channels many people never learned to fully read, offering trust, offering information, offering, in their own particular language, real and genuine connection. The quiet you may have assumed, watching a cat rest calmly nearby, was very likely never quiet at all, simply a conversation happening in a register you had not yet learned to hear. Picture discovering, after years of living beside someone, that they had, in fact, been speaking to you in a second language all along, one you had simply never studied closely enough to notice. Learning to read a cat well can feel a little like that, an entire additional layer of relationship, quietly available the whole time, waiting only to be properly heard. And having spent this time learning how cats speak to us, it feels only fitting now to turn briefly towards something a little rarer, a little more recently discovered, some genuine surprises the scientific world has only uncovered in the last few years, tucked away in fossil caves, in genetics labs, and in careful, patient fieldwork around the world. Part 7. Rare and Recent Discoveries. Fact 61. In 2024, researchers identified fossil remains of what may be the smallest cat species ever known to science, found inside a cave in eastern China. The fossil, a single, small fragment of a lower jawbone, complete with 2 teeth, was discovered in Hualongdong Cave and dated to roughly 300,000 years ago. Based on its size, researchers estimated the living animal weighed only around 1 kilogram, comparable to today's smallest living wild cats, and gave it the name Prionellurus curtini. Picture an entire, previously unknown chapter of the cat family's history, hidden for 300,000 years, resting quietly the whole time inside a single small piece of bone no larger than a coin, waiting patiently in the dark for exactly the right person to find it. That is essentially what happened here. An entire tiny species brought back into the light through nothing more than careful, patient excavation. The lead researcher noted that finding such delicate remains at all was unusual, since small forest-dwelling cats typically leave behind very little that survives so many hundreds of thousands of years. The cave itself, with its particular preserving conditions, appears to be the reason this small, quiet piece of evidence managed to last long enough to finally be found. Fact 62. That same fossil discovery may also help answer a long-standing question about the ancestry connecting several modern small wild cats. Researchers noted that Prionellurus curtini appears to sit close to the point where the lineages leading to leopard cats, Pallas's cats, and eventually domestic cats first began to diverge from one another. In other words, this newly identified, remarkably small ancient cat may represent something close to a shared ancestor, or at least a close relative of one, connecting several branches of the modern cat family tree that had not been clearly linked together before. Picture an old family reunion, where a distant, previously unknown relative suddenly arrives, and in doing so, quietly reveals exactly how 2 branches of the family, long assumed to be unconnected, are actually related after all. This fossil functions a little like that unexpected guest, arriving late but clarifying something that had remained genuinely uncertain for a very long time. It is a small, quiet reminder that even now, in this very decade, the full story of how cats came to exist at all is still actively being written, filled in, piece by careful piece, by researchers working patiently in caves and laboratories around the world. Fact 63. In 2025, Finnish researchers formally identified an entirely new cat coat pattern caused by a genetic mechanism unlike any previously known feline coloration. Called salmiak, after a popular Finnish salty licorice candy it visually resembles, the pattern features black fur that fades gradually toward white at the very tip of each individual hair, producing a distinctive frosted, speckled appearance. Crucially, researchers found this pattern is not caused by the usual gene responsible for most feline color variation, but instead by a small, previously unidentified missing segment of DNA, a genuinely new genetic mechanism, discovered for the very first time. Picture an artist discovering an entirely new pigment, one that had simply never been catalogued before, tucked quietly inside a paint set that scientists had assumed, for decades, they already fully understood down to the very last color. That is close to the scale of this particular surprise. A wholly new tool in the genetic paint set responsible for how a cat's coat comes to look the way it does. Because the trait is recessive, requiring both parents to carry the same rare mutation, salmiak cats remain genuinely uncommon, and this discovery, made so recently, is a reminder that even something as visible and familiar as a cat's own fur can still hold real, previously unknown surprises. Fact 64. Also in the past 2 years, researchers formally confirmed a brand new species of small wild cat living in the forests of South America, the clouded tiger cat. Long assumed to simply be a regional variant of a more widely recognized species, genetic analysis eventually revealed clear enough differences to warrant classifying the clouded tiger cat as its own distinct species entirely, a small, strikingly patterned wild cat native to parts of the Atlantic forest region. Unfortunately, like many small wild cats, it also faces significant habitat loss, newly named even as its long-term future remains genuinely uncertain. Picture discovering an entirely new star, one that had, in fact, been visible in the night sky the entire time, simply mistaken, for many years, for a slightly unusual version of a star already known and catalogued. The clouded tiger cat's story unfolds in something like that same shape, always present, always real, simply waiting for the right careful study to finally recognize it correctly. It is a small, useful reminder that the cat family tree, even now, is not a fixed, fully settled thing. New branches are still occasionally found, tucked quietly into forests that have simply not yet been searched closely enough. Fact 65. The longest-lived cat on record, according to Guinness World Records, was a cat named Creme Puff, who lived to the age of 38 years and 3 days. Born in August of 1967 and living until 2005, Creme Puff, from Austin, Texas, lived to an age equivalent to well over 150 in human years, nearly double the typical lifespan of an average house cat. Her owner attributed her unusually long life to an unusual varied diet and close attentive care, though such an extreme case remains, by any measure, genuinely exceptional. Picture a single candle, lit at a birthday celebration in the late 1960s, somehow still quietly burning, decade after decade, long after nearly every other candle from that same celebration had gone out. That image gives some sense of just how unusually long 38 years is, in the ordinary lifespan of a cat. It is a gentle reminder, tucked into this small record, of just how much variation exists in a single life, and just how much love and care, alongside no small amount of fortunate biology, can sometimes stretch a life out, quietly, far longer than anyone might reasonably expect. Fact 66. Genetic differences, called polydactyly, occasionally give cats extra toes, sometimes 6, 7, or even more, on a single paw, a trait made especially famous by the writer Ernest Hemingway. Polydactyl cats carry a genetic variation causing extra digits to form during early development, most commonly on the front paws, giving some cats an unusually wide, almost mitten-like paw shape. Hemingway kept a 6-toed cat at his home in Key West, and to this day, a colony of his descendants, many still polydactyl, continues to live on the same property, now maintained as a museum. Picture an entire small community of animals, descended from a single, particular cat, still living, generation after generation, in almost exactly the same place their very distant ancestor once did, decades and decades after that first cat's original owner passed away. There is something quietly moving about that kind of continuity, a genetic quirk, carried forward faithfully across so many years, in the very same corner of the world where it first began. It is one more small, genuine surprise tucked inside ordinary cat genetics, that something as simple as an extra toe can carry a story forward, quietly, for the better part of a century. Fact 67. Researchers have also, in recent years, made real progress toward fully sequencing and mapping the complete domestic cat genome, filling in details that remained genuinely unclear even a decade ago. This ongoing genetic work has helped researchers trace, with far greater precision than before, exactly which genes are responsible for specific coat colors, patterns, and even certain inherited health conditions, work that continues to build on the discoveries mentioned earlier tonight. The two domestication lineages, the late arrival of the tabby pattern, and newly identified variations like the salmiak coat. Picture a very old, very detailed map, largely accurate in its broad shape for a long time, but still missing several smaller regions, left blank or only roughly sketched in, gradually being filled in, piece by piece, as better instruments and more careful surveying became available. The genetic map of the modern cat is very much still being completed in exactly that way, more detailed with each passing year. It means that some of what feels, tonight, like settled, well-established fact about cats is, in truth, quite recent knowledge, understood clearly only within the last decade or two, a reminder of just how much is still actively being discovered about an animal so many people assume has already been fully studied and understood. Fact 68. Even a cat's ordinary purr, one of the most familiar sounds in the world, remains, as we heard earlier tonight, only partially understood, an active area of real, ongoing scientific research even now. The 2023 discovery of fibrous pads within the larynx, capable of producing purring vibrations without requiring continuous, active neural signaling, did not fully settle the matter. Researchers were careful to describe it as an important new piece of a puzzle still being assembled, rather than a final, complete answer. Exactly how, and even fully why, cats purr remains a subject that continues to draw serious scientific attention. Picture a very old house, lived in and loved for generations, and yet, even now, still occasionally revealing a hidden room, a false wall, some small architectural surprise no one had ever fully mapped before. The humble purr, heard by nearly everyone who has ever shared a home with a cat, turns out to be a little like that house, familiar on the surface, and still, even now, capable of genuine surprise underneath. It is a small, quietly wonderful thought to end this particular part on, that the very sound resting beside you tonight, so ordinary, so endlessly familiar, remains, in real and meaningful ways, an open scientific question. Fact 69. Cats have also, in recent years, been the subject of growing scientific interest regarding cognition, memory, and problem-solving, revealing abilities more sophisticated than they are often given credit for. Studies have found that cats demonstrate a genuine understanding of object permanence, the knowledge that something still exists even after it disappears from view, at a level comparable to, and in some specific tests, slightly beyond, what is typically observed in dogs. Cats have also shown the ability to remember the location of food after a meaningful delay, and to adjust their behavior based on past experience with particular people or situations. Picture a quiet observer in the corner of a room, appearing, at a glance, to be doing very little at all, and yet, in fact, carefully tracking, remembering, and quietly filing away far more of what is happening than anyone in the room realizes. That underestimated observer is not a bad description of an ordinary house cat, watching calmly from across a room, taking in and retaining far more than its stillness would suggest. It is a gentle correction, worth sitting with tonight, to any lingering idea that cats are simple, instinct-driven creatures, coasting through life on reflex alone. The evidence, gathered carefully and quite recently, points instead toward a mind doing real, ongoing work, quietly, behind a famously unreadable face. Fact 70. Taken together, these recent discoveries, a tiny fossil cat, a new coat pattern, a newly confirmed species, a genome still being mapped, a purr still not fully explained, tell a clear and rather lovely story. Our understanding of cats remains genuinely, actively unfinished. For an animal that has lived alongside humans for thousands of years, sharing homes, sharing beds, sharing quiet evenings just like this one, it is a striking thing to realize how much remains to be discovered. How many small, real surprises are still, even now, waiting patiently in fossil caves, genetics labs, and careful long-term studies around the world. Picture a favorite old book, read so many times its spine has softened and its pages have grown gentle and worn, and yet, somehow, still capable of revealing a small detail you had never quite noticed before, tucked quietly in the margin of a page you had read 100 times already. The cat, it turns out, remains a little like that book, endlessly familiar, and still, genuinely, not fully finished being understood. And perhaps that, more than any single fact tonight, is worth carrying gently into the rest of this story, that the small, warm, quietly breathing animal resting near you, however well you think you know it, still holds a little genuine mystery, waiting, patiently, for the right kind of quiet attention. Part 8. The Sleeping Mind. Fact 71. An adult cat typically sleeps somewhere between 12 and 16 hours a day, and kittens and elderly cats often sleep even more. This adds up to something close to 2/3 of a cat's entire life spent asleep, far more than nearly any other common household animal, and considerably more than the roughly 8 hours most humans manage each night. Much of this sleep, however, is lighter than it first appears. A cat can shift from apparent deep rest to fully alert readiness in a fraction of a second, ears swiveling instantly toward any unfamiliar sound. Picture a night watchman technically listed as off-duty for most of a long shift, and yet resting in a chair positioned carefully near the door, one eye effectively still open the entire time. A sleeping cat occupies something close to that same in-between state for much of its rest, deeply relaxed, and yet never entirely, fully off guard. It is part of why a cat can seem, at times, to wake instantly and completely from what looked, moments before, like the deepest possible sleep. Very often, that sleep was lighter and more watchful than it appeared from the outside. Fact 72. Within a cat's long daily sleep, it does experience genuine periods of REM sleep, the same deep sleep stage in which human dreaming most often occurs. During REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, a cat's brain activity closely resembles its waking state, even while its muscles remain almost entirely relaxed. Researchers studying this stage in cats have observed twitching whiskers, softly moving paws, and occasional small vocal sounds during this period, patterns broadly consistent with dreaming, though it remains impossible to know, with any real certainty, exactly what a dreaming cat actually experiences. Picture a person sound asleep, eyes closed, body still, and yet their eyes shifting rapidly beneath closed lids, a private, invisible performance unfolding somewhere just out of view. A cat, in REM sleep, appears to be experiencing something in that same general territory, an inner world clearly active, even while the outer body stays almost completely still. We cannot ask a cat what it dreams of, and any honest answer must stop exactly there, at genuine uncertainty. But watching a sleeping cat's paws twitch gently, its whiskers flutter, it is hard not to imagine, at least a little, some private, unseen chase unfolding quietly, somewhere just behind those closed eyes. Fact 73. Cats, like several other predator species, tend to sleep in short, frequent bursts rather than one single long stretch, a pattern often called polyphasic sleep. Rather than sleeping deeply through one long, uninterrupted night, the way most humans do, cats naturally distribute their many hours of sleep across numerous shorter periods throughout both day and night, waking periodically to check their surroundings, eat, or simply stretch before settling back down again. This pattern likely traces back to a wild ancestor whose hunting success depended on staying alert during the sensitive, in-between hours of dawn and dusk, rather than any single fixed nighttime schedule. Picture a sailor on a long voyage, sleeping not through one uninterrupted night, but in a series of carefully scheduled, shorter watches, alert periods deliberately woven throughout both day and night, always ready to be roused quickly if needed. A cat's sleep schedule follows something close to that same old practical logic, built originally for a life that could never fully afford one single, long, undefended stretch of unconsciousness. It is part of why a cat's schedule can feel, to a human housemate, so pleasantly unpredictable. A nap here, a burst of activity there, no fixed single bedtime, simply many small, careful rests, woven steadily throughout an entire day and night. Fact 74. Most cats show a measurable preference for using one particular paw over the other, a trait researchers call paw laterality, closely comparable to human-handedness. Studies observing cats reaching for food, batting at toys, or stepping first through a doorway have found that individual cats reliably favor one paw over the other, and interestingly, Some research suggests this preference may differ somewhat between male and female cats as a general pattern, similar to broader trends that have also been observed in some human-handedness studies. Picture two people reaching, without thinking, for the very same door handle, one instinctively leading with their right hand, the other just as instinctively leading with their left, neither one making any conscious decision about it at all. A cat's paw preference appears to work in something like that same automatic, unconsidered way, a small, consistent bias, present quietly across an entire lifetime. It is a small, easy experiment you could try yourself sometime, offering a toy or a small treat and simply watching, carefully, which paw reaches first, again and again. More often than not, a clear, consistent preference reveals itself, a small, hidden signature tucked quietly into an otherwise ordinary movement. Fact 75. Cats often continue instinctive hunting behaviors, stalking, pouncing, batting at small moving objects, even when they are entirely well fed and have never once needed to hunt for their own survival. This persistence suggests that hunting behavior in cats is driven by more than pure hunger alone. It appears to be a deeply built-in instinct, satisfying on some level independent of an empty stomach, closely tied to normal play. A well-fed house cat pouncing eagerly on a toy mouse is not performing survival in any practical sense. It is exercising a genuine, deep-seated behavioral need. Picture a skilled musician who has long since retired from any paid performance, and yet still sits down at a piano regularly, purely for the pleasure of playing, the original practical need long gone, and the underlying drive to do it remaining exactly as strong as ever. A well-fed cat stalking a feather toy across the living room floor carries something of that same quiet persistence, instinct continuing on long after its original, practical purpose has been fully met. It is part of why regular, meaningful play matters so much for an indoor cat's well-being, not simply as entertainment, but as a genuine outlet for a deep, old instinct that never quite goes quiet, no matter how full the food bowl happens to be. Fact 76. Cats display what researchers describe as distinct, measurable personality traits, differing meaningfully from one individual to the next, in ways that remain fairly consistent across each cat's entire life. Several studies have identified recurring personality dimensions in cats, broadly similar in concept to how personality is studied in humans, including traits like boldness, sociability toward people and other animals, and overall activity level. Just as importantly, researchers have found these traits tend to remain notably stable over time. A particularly bold, outgoing kitten is likely to grow into a similarly bold, outgoing adult cat. Picture a large box of individually wrapped gifts, all similar in outward shape and size, and yet opened one by one, each revealing something genuinely different inside, no two contents quite alike. Cats, so often lumped together as one single, predictable category, turn out to be far closer to that box of individually distinct gifts, each one carrying its own particular, fairly stable character. It is one more reminder, gentle and worth sitting with tonight, that the specific cat resting near you is not simply an example of cat in the abstract. It is a genuine individual, shaped by its own particular temperament, carried forward, largely unchanged, across its entire life. Fact 77. Cats are capable of a form of learning through simple observation, sometimes picking up new behaviors partly by watching another cat or even a person perform them first. While cats are generally considered somewhat less inclined toward direct imitation than some other intelligent animals, several studies and countless individual case reports describe cats learning to open doors, operate simple latches, or navigate new environments notably faster after watching another animal, or a person, demonstrate the action first. This suggests a genuine capacity to learn, at least partially, by simply paying close attention. Picture someone watching, quietly and carefully, from the sidelines of an unfamiliar game, absorbing the basic rules and rhythm before ever attempting to join in themselves, learning happening well before any direct participation begins. A cat, closely observing a housemate work a door handle, or a person reach for a particular cabinet, may be doing something quite similar, quietly building understanding well before ever attempting the action itself. It adds one more small layer to the picture of a mind at work behind that famously calm, watchful face, a mind that is not simply reacting moment to moment, but genuinely, patiently learning. Fact 78. Cats appear capable of a degree of what researchers cautiously describe as emotional contagion, showing measurable stress responses when a closely bonded person or animal nearby is visibly distressed. Some studies have found that cats living in households with reported higher levels of human stress or conflict themselves display more frequent signs of anxiety, including changes in grooming behavior, appetite, and general activity level. While researchers are careful not to overstate this as full emotional understanding in the way humans experience it, the pattern does suggest cats are genuinely responsive on some real level to the emotional atmosphere of the home they live in. Picture a room where one instrument, slightly out of tune, causes every other nearby instrument to drift gradually out of tune as well, simply through shared vibration, without any of them consciously choosing to change at all. A cat's well-being appears to be tuned, in some real, if still only partly understood way, to the emotional atmosphere of its household, quietly shifting in response to tension it cannot name, but can clearly, in some sense, feel. It is a gentle, worthwhile thought to sit with tonight, a small reminder that the calm you offer a cat is rarely one-directional. In a real sense, offering your own steadiness may be one of the more meaningful gifts you give this particular relationship, whether you ever consciously think of it that way or not. Fact 79. A cat's brain, while considerably smaller than a human's in overall size, shares a remarkably similar basic structural layout, particularly in the regions responsible for emotion and memory. Roughly 90% of a cat's brain structure closely resembles the corresponding regions found in the human brain, particularly the areas responsible for emotional processing and memory formation, even though a cat's brain overall is, understandably, dramatically smaller. This structural similarity is part of why cats display behaviors, fear, comfort, attachment, and stress that map fairly closely, at least in outward appearance, onto familiar human emotional categories. Picture two buildings of dramatically different overall size, a small cottage and a large mansion, And yet, upon walking through both, discovering that many of the individual rooms, kitchen, bedroom, a quiet sitting room, are laid out in a strikingly similar pattern in each, just built to very different overall scale. A cat's brain and a human brain share something of that same underlying architecture, differently sized, and yet, in real structural ways, built along strikingly familiar lines. It offers a small, grounding thought, one worth carrying gently into the end of this part. The animal resting near you tonight is not simply reacting on pure, unfeeling instinct. In real, structural, measurable ways, something genuinely close to feeling, as we understand it ourselves, is very likely happening quietly, right there, beneath that calm and settled expression. Fact 80. Taken all together, the sleeping mind of a cat, its dreams, its instincts, its steady, particular personality, its quiet capacity to sense and be shaped by the people around it, paints a picture considerably richer than the old idea of a simple, purely instinct-driven animal. There is memory here. There is something resembling emotion. There is individual character carried consistently across an entire life. And for roughly 2/3 of that life, there is also, quite literally, an entire hidden world of sleep and possible dreaming, unfolding steadily, night after night, mostly unseen by anyone at all. Picture an iceberg, the small visible portion above the waterline representing everything you have ever directly observed, the alert eyes, the occasional meow, the warm, familiar weight curled beside you, and the much larger, mostly hidden mass beneath the surface representing everything else, the dreams, the instincts, the quiet, particular mind, working on, steadily, mostly out of view. And now, having spent this whole part sitting with the private, inner life of a cat, it feels only right to widen the frame once more, gently, outward, toward the lives cats live entirely on their own, away from any human home at all, out in the world, among each other. Part 9. The lives cats live among each other, Tine. Fact 81. Away from human homes, cats are capable of forming genuine social groups, most commonly organized around related females, in what researchers describe as a matriarchal structure. Feral cat colonies are typically built around a core group of related females, mothers, daughters, sisters, aunts, who often remain together for life, sharing territory, and in some documented cases, even cooperating to nurse and raise kittens communally, regardless of which female gave birth to which litter. Male cats, by contrast, generally roam across wider territories and move between different colonies over time, rather than settling permanently within one particular group. Picture a large, extended family living across several connected houses on the same quiet street, generations of women staying close together, sharing meals and childcare freely across household lines, while the men in the family travel more widely, visiting more than truly settling. That loose picture captures something real about how many feral cat colonies actually organize themselves. A structure built primarily around lasting bonds between related females. It is a picture quite different from the solitary, independent hunter cats are so often stereotyped as. Left to their own devices, cats are, in fact, fully capable of rich, cooperative, genuinely social lives. Fact 82. Within these colonies, related females sometimes engage in what researchers call communal nursing, allowing any nursing mother in the group to feed kittens that are not biologically her own. This cooperative arrangement can meaningfully improve survival odds for the whole litter, since kittens are never left completely without access to milk, even if their own mother is temporarily away hunting or resting elsewhere. It reflects a level of genuine, active cooperation that stands in real contrast to the common assumption of cats as purely solitary, self-interested animals. Picture a small, informal childcare cooperative, quietly organized among a close group of neighbors, where any available adult simply steps in to help whichever child needs care in that particular moment. No formal schedule required, simply a shared, practical willingness to help. Feral cat colonies appear to operate, at least in this one particular respect, along something close to that same cooperative logic. It is a small, meaningful correction to an old, oversimplified idea. Cats, given the chance to form a genuine community, are entirely capable of real, active generosity toward one another. Fact 83. Territory size for a cat varies enormously depending on food availability, sex, and whether the cat is spayed, neutered, or intact, ranging from a small, tightly held area to a territory covering many acres. Male cats that have not been neutered typically roam across the largest territories, sometimes covering considerably more ground than female cats or neutered males, largely driven by the wider search for mates. Female cats, particularly those raising kittens, tend to maintain smaller, more tightly defended core territories, closely centered around a safe, reliable nesting site. Picture two very different kinds of daily journeys. One person commuting widely across an entire city every single day, covering broad, shifting ground, and another person who works, mostly, from a small, carefully maintained home office, rarely straying far from one steady, familiar center. Cats organize their territories along something like that same basic contrast, shaped heavily by their particular role and circumstance. It is one more small piece of evidence for just how flexible, how genuinely adaptable a cat's behavior really is, shaped constantly by circumstance, rather than following any single, fixed pattern across every individual. Fact 84. Cats mark and defend territory largely through scent rather than direct, ongoing physical confrontation, a strategy that minimizes unnecessary risk of injury. Scent marking, through facial rubbing, scratching, and in some cases urine marking, allows cats to communicate ownership of a particular space to other cats passing through later, without either cat needing to be physically present at the same time at all. This lets boundaries be respected and maintained largely through indirect signals, reducing how often direct, potentially dangerous physical conflict actually needs to happen. Picture a quiet, carefully maintained fence line between two neighboring properties, respected by both sides simply because it is clearly marked and well understood, requiring no actual confrontation between the two neighbors involved, most of the time, to remain effective. Cat territories function in something like that same way, boundaries maintained largely through clear, asynchronous signals rather than constant, direct defense. It reflects a kind of quiet efficiency, an entire system of property lines and mutual understanding, built almost entirely out of scent, requiring no shared language, no direct meeting, and, most of the time, no real conflict at all. Fact 85. Cats are most naturally active during dawn and dusk, a pattern called crepuscular activity, rather than being purely nocturnal, as is sometimes assumed. While cats are certainly capable of seeing and moving comfortably in low light, their sharpest overall activity and hunting instinct tends to center on the transitional hours around sunrise and sunset, times when many small prey species, including various rodents, are also naturally most active themselves. This is a slightly different pattern than being fully nocturnal, active mainly at night, though the two are easy to confuse. Picture two different kinds of workers, one who works a full overnight shift straight through until morning, and another whose particular schedule is built instead around the very beginning and very end of the working day, quiet through the deep middle of the night. A cat's natural rhythm fits that second pattern far more closely, tuned specifically to those two particular in-between windows, rather than to darkness itself. It helps explain a familiar pattern many cat owners know well: sudden bursts of energetic activity right around early morning or early evening, sandwiching a much quieter, more restful stretch through the deepest part of the night. Fact 86. Free-roaming and feral cats play a genuinely complicated ecological role, and their impact on local wildlife populations is an area of real, serious, ongoing scientific study and concern. Because cats are highly effective, instinctive predators, free-roaming populations can have a measurable effect on local populations of small birds, reptiles, and other wildlife, particularly in more sensitive or isolated ecosystems. This is a real, well-documented concern taken seriously by wildlife researchers and conservation organizations, and it is part of why many experts recommend keeping pet cats safely indoors or providing supervised, enclosed outdoor access. Picture a new plant, introduced with entirely good intentions into an unfamiliar garden, and yet, without any deliberate harm intended at all, gradually outcompeting several of the garden's original, more delicate species simply by being unusually effective at what it naturally does. A highly skilled predator, however beloved at home, can have a real, similar kind of impact when introduced, or allowed to roam freely into a wildlife community not originally built to include it. It is a more complicated piece of the story than most of tonight's gentler facts, worth naming honestly, precisely because it comes from the same deep care about the natural world that everything else tonight has come from too. Fact 87. Despite this complexity, well-managed community programs, particularly trap, neuter, and return efforts, have shown real, measurable success in gradually stabilizing and reducing feral cat populations over time, in a humane and sustainable way. These programs work by humanely trapping feral cats, spaying or neutering them, and then returning them to their existing colony, preventing future litters while allowing the existing cats to live out their natural lives in familiar territory. Over years of consistent effort, colony sizes in a managed area tend to decline steadily and naturally, without ever requiring the removal, or worse, of the cats already living there. Picture a slow, patient gardener choosing not to tear out an overgrown section all at once, but instead carefully thinning and managing it, season after season, allowing the space to gradually settle into a healthier, more sustainable balance over time. Trap, neuter, and return programs work along something like that same patient, long-view logic, addressing the underlying cause gently rather than reacting harshly to the visible symptom alone. It is a hopeful note to sit with, tucked into a more complicated part of tonight's story: real, careful, compassionate solutions built and refined over years of genuine, dedicated effort by people who clearly, deeply care. Fact 88. Cats communicate differently with each other than they do with humans, relying far more heavily on body posture, scent, and brief, low-intensity vocal sounds than on the more elaborate meowing so many cats reserve specifically for people. Between two cats, a simple, slow approach, a lowered head, a brief, soft chirrup or trill often carries as much meaning as any longer vocal exchange would. Much of cat-to-cat communication happens at a subtlety and a distance that can be genuinely difficult for a human observer to fully notice or interpret, even while watching closely. Picture two old friends meeting on a busy street, exchanging what looks, to any nearby stranger, like nothing more than a brief nod and a few unremarkable words. And yet, between the two of them, that same small exchange carries an entire shared history and understanding. Two familiar cats greeting one another can carry something of that same quiet, compressed richness, easy for an outside observer to entirely miss. It is one more reminder of how much of a cat's real communication happens in registers simply built for other cats, a whole additional layer of language existing quietly alongside the version, warmer and more expressive, so many cats have specifically learned to offer us. Fact 89. Even solitary hunting cats, the more typical pattern outside of organized colonies, are not truly asocial in any complete sense. They simply organize their social lives around efficiency rather than constant, close companionship. A cat hunting alone is not avoiding social contact out of any deep dislike for other cats. It is following an old evolutionary logic. Small prey is generally easier to catch alone, without the noise, competition, or risk of scaring quarry away that hunting in a larger group would inevitably introduce. Social bonds, when they do form, tend to happen instead around safer, lower-stakes moments, resting, grooming, and raising young together. Picture a group of close friends who each prefer working quietly alone at their own individual desks throughout the day, and yet gather warmly, genuinely, and consistently every single evening for dinner together. Cats organize much of their social life along something like that same practical rhythm: independence during the work of hunting, and real, chosen closeness during the quieter, safer hours. It offers a gentler, more accurate picture than the old idea of the fully solitary cat, an animal that hunts alone by careful evolutionary design, and yet still, given the chance, clearly chooses closeness, connection, and company. Fact 90. Taken together, the wild and feral lives of cats reveal an animal considerably more socially flexible than its reputation for solitude might suggest, capable of deep, lasting bonds, genuine cooperation, and real community entirely on its own terms, with no human involvement required at all. Matriarchal colonies, communal nursing, careful, scent-based boundaries that avoid unnecessary conflict, a rhythm of independence during work and closeness during rest. None of this fits neatly into the old, simplified idea of the cat as a purely solitary creature, tolerating company at best, needing none of it at all. Picture an entire hidden society, functioning quietly and completely just outside the edges of most human neighborhoods, entirely self-sufficient, entirely capable of forming its own rich bonds, its own particular culture, without ever requiring a single person to organize or guide any part of it. And it is worth carrying that picture gently into these final, closing moments, because the particular cat resting near you tonight, however singular and however yours it may feel, carries all of this inside it too, an old, deep, genuinely social capacity, one that, quietly, chose to extend itself, at some point, to include you. Part 10. The Bond and the Stillness. Fact 91. Recent research has found that the bond between cats and their owners involves measurable mutual shifts in oxytocin, a hormone closely associated with trust, attachment, and comfort in a wide range of social animals, humans included. Studies looking at gentle interaction between cats and their owners, quiet petting, sitting closely together, mutual gaze, have found rises in oxytocin levels in both the person and the cat afterward, suggesting the comfort in this relationship runs in both directions at once, rather than being something a cat simply receives from us. This kind of two-way hormonal shift has also been documented in the bond between dogs and their owners, and now in a small but growing body of research in cats as well. Picture two tuning forks placed near enough to each other, each one, once struck, gradually causing the other to hum quietly along the very same frequency, neither one needing to be touched directly for the effect to pass between them. Something close to that quiet, mutual resonance appears to be happening, chemically, between a cat and the person it has chosen to trust, each one, in its own way, shifting gently in response to the other's calm presence. It means that this shared stillness, right now, whether real, in this very moment, or simply imagined together tonight, is never a one-directional gift. Whatever calm a cat's presence offers you, some real, measurable version of that same calm appears to be moving back toward the cat as well. Fact 92. Beyond oxytocin specifically, a growing body of research has linked regular contact with cats to modest but measurable reductions in stress, blood pressure, and self-reported anxiety among owners. Several studies tracking cat owners over time have found lower average blood pressure and reduced day-to-day stress markers compared to non-owners, and some research has specifically pointed to the physical presence of a calmly purring cat as a meaningful contributing factor, alongside the simple, steady companionship cats provide more broadly. Researchers are careful to note this area of study is still developing, and individual results naturally vary, but the overall pattern, gentle, modest, real, has shown up fairly consistently. Picture a small, steady weight resting quietly on a scale that has spent the whole day tilted slightly too far toward tension, not enough, on its own to solve every problem entirely, but enough, consistently, to nudge the whole balance gently back toward something calmer. A cat's steady, purring presence appears to function, for many people, as something close to that small, real, gentle counterweight. It is a fitting thought to sit with, this close to the end of tonight's long, unhurried journey, that the quiet warmth so many people feel, curled up beside a cat at the end of a long day, is not simply a feeling. It is something real and measurable, happening quietly in the body at exactly this kind of moment. Fact 93. Even the specific low frequency of a cat's purr, the very same 20 to 30 cycles per second we sat with, together, at the very beginning of tonight's journey, may play a direct, physical role in this particular sense of calm. Some researchers studying stress and vibration more broadly have noted that low, steady, rhythmic vibrations in that general range can have a measurably calming effect on the human nervous system, slowing breathing, easing muscle tension, encouraging a shift toward the body's natural rest state. A purring cat resting against your chest or side may, in this sense, be delivering something close to a very old, very simple, very effective form of therapy, one requiring no appointment, no explanation, no real effort from you at all. Picture the low, steady hum of a train heard from inside a quiet sleeper car late at night, a sound many travelers describe as genuinely lulling, encouraging rest almost against their will, simply through its unhurried, unbroken steadiness. A cat's purr, close against your body right now, may be working through something close to that same old, simple mechanism. We began tonight by asking what that low hum actually was, and here, near the very end, the answer has grown only richer, not simpler, a sound with ancient evolutionary roots, uncertain even now in its full mechanism, and yet, somehow, still capable of reaching all the way into your own nervous system, gently, and asking it, quietly, to rest. Fact 94. The relationship between cats and the humans who love them has, in recent years, become its own small area of genuine scientific study, examining not simply what cats do, but what this particular bond does for the people involved. Researchers have studied attachment styles between cats and owners using methods closely adapted from techniques originally developed to study human-infant attachment, finding that many cats display genuine, secure attachment behaviors toward a trusted person, seeking proximity when stressed, using that person as what researchers call a secure base from which to explore an unfamiliar space. Picture a young child in an unfamiliar room, glancing back repeatedly toward a trusted parent before venturing further out to explore, drawing steady confidence and courage from that one dependable, calm presence nearby. Many cats, studies now suggest, orient themselves toward a trusted person in something close to that very same way, a real, genuine anchor point, quietly present in an otherwise uncertain world. It is a lovely thing to realize, this late in such a long, unhurried night together, that the closeness so many people feel toward a cat is not simply projection, not simply a story we tell ourselves. It appears to be something the cat, in its own way, is genuinely doing too. Fact 95. And still, for all of tonight's careful science, the larynx pads, the ancient lineages, The hidden fossil, the newly discovered coat, something about a cat's purr remains, quite happily, beyond full explanation. We now understand more about the mechanism than at almost any point in history, and yet even the researchers closest to this work describe the picture as incomplete, an old, familiar sound still holding real, genuine mystery, even now. Perhaps that incompleteness is, itself, part of what makes the sound so worth simply sitting with, rather than only studying. Picture standing at the edge of a genuinely vast, quiet lake at night, comfortable in knowing a great deal about how water behaves, how light moves across its surface, and still, entirely at peace with not knowing everything hidden in its depths, the not knowing itself becoming, somehow, part of the lake's particular calm. A cat's purr, held gently in mind tonight, can be sat with in something like that same easy, unfinished peace. You do not need to understand a single fact from tonight in order to feel, right now, whatever calm that low, steady hum has always offered you. The understanding was simply this evening's quiet companion, never the price of admission for the comfort itself. Fact 96. If you have listened this far, your own breathing has very likely slowed, gently, somewhere along the way, without you ever deciding for it to. This is not unusual, and it is not only about cats specifically. It reflects something broader about how the human body responds to slow, steady, repetitive sound and rhythm, gradually matching its own pace to whatever calm rhythm surrounds it. Long, unhurried stories, softly spoken, low in pitch, steady in pace, tend to produce exactly this same gentle, physical drift toward rest. Picture a small boat, resting on open water, gradually settling into the same slow, easy rhythm as the waves moving steadily beneath it, requiring no effort of its own at all, simply drifting, naturally, into matching that larger, surrounding rhythm. Your own body, listening quietly tonight, has likely been doing something very close to that same easy, natural drifting. There is nowhere else you need to be right now, nothing else you need to do with any of this. Only this same slow, steady rhythm, continuing gently onward for just a little while longer. Fact 97. Somewhere, tonight, countless cats are purring in countless quiet rooms, each one, in its own small way, offering exactly this same old steady comfort to someone else, in some other corner of the world. It is a strangely lovely thought to hold, this late in the night, that this particular comfort, low, steady, endlessly repeated, is happening simultaneously in an almost uncountable number of quiet homes, right now, all across the world, entirely independent of one another, and yet, in some real sense, all part of the very same old, shared story. Picture countless small lit windows scattered across a vast, dark landscape seen from high above, each one entirely unaware of all the others, and yet each one, in its own separate way, holding the very same small, warm, steady light. Every purring cat tonight is a little like one of those small windows, quietly glowing, entirely on its own, and yet part of something much larger and older than any single room could ever fully contain. Wherever you are listening from tonight, know that this particular comfort is neither rare nor small. It is one of the oldest, most widely shared forms of quiet company this world has to offer. Fact 98. And it began, as so much of tonight has, with something almost absurdly simple, a small animal choosing, thousands of years ago, to come just a little closer to the fire and stay. No single deliberate decision made that choice. No one bred it, or trained it, or shaped it specifically for us. It simply happened, slowly, gently, generation after generation, until a wild, self-sufficient hunter became, somehow, this, a warm, steady weight, resting easily beside you, offering a sound old enough to predate written language itself. Picture a single seed, carried entirely by chance on some ordinary wind, landing in exactly the right patch of soil, and slowly, unremarkably, over many quiet years, growing into something large enough to eventually offer real, lasting shade to anyone who happens to rest beneath it. The whole long story of the cat, purring gently beside you tonight, grew from something almost exactly that small, and that unplanned. It is worth holding, gently, in these final, quiet moments, just how much history rests curled beside you, entirely unaware of its own weight, entirely at ease, simply here. Fact 99. Every single fact from tonight, the larynx, the whiskers, the ancient lineages, the fossil, the coat pattern, the oxytocin, ultimately points back toward this one same, quiet place, a small, warm body, breathing slowly, making a sound that has comforted creatures for longer than anyone can fully trace. You do not need to hold on to any of it now. Let the facts drift gently loose, the way a held breath finally, fully releases. What remains, what has always remained, underneath every single fact we walked through together tonight, is simply this: warmth, closeness, and an old, steady sound, asking for nothing at all in return. Picture, one final time, that first image from the very beginning of tonight, a low, steady hum, rising and falling gently beside you, a sound you have heard 1,000 times, and yet, tonight, perhaps, heard a little differently, a little more closely, a little more completely than ever before. And know that wherever this particular story first began, in a fossil cave, in an Egyptian temple, beside some ancient, half-forgotten fire, it has arrived, gently, exactly here, tonight, resting quietly beside you. Fact 100. So let the purring, wherever it is tonight, real or simply remembered, be the very last thing your mind holds on to, low and steady and endlessly patient, needing nothing more from you now than this, your slow, easy breathing and your quiet, undisturbed rest. You are the small, warm room the whole long story finally arrived in. You are the fire it chose to stay beside. Thank you for spending this long, unhurried night